What is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and of course all the they them royalty out there. Appreciate you too for tuning in. This is the Broke Boys Sports Podcast, episode 221. According to my count, I'm sure I lost track multiple times along the way, but 221 is what I'm gonna go with because it is what number was saved from the last time that I did this podcast. So I am also doing the thing where I send out tweets and stuff like that to get people to watch live, because apparently there's a contingent of people who watch like super early in the morning. Also, my pod is on a delay, so I'm trying to figure out what the deal is here for when it goes live, because it's probably going to boom through the audio and everything like that when it goes live. But here's hoping, fingers crossed, it doesn't do that. Yep, putting the link in there. NFL. If not, it'll upload afterwards, I think, because that's how I set it up. Anyway, we got I got a lot of things to talk about. You know the drill. We're trying to get through everything that happened in this week of NFL football within an hour or less. I've been doing last week was pretty terrible. Last week, I'm not gonna lie, we dropped the ball pretty hard. And when I say we, I mean me, because you would never let me down personally. Because I know you're trying your hardest. And once again, kind of crazy, somebody sat through and listened to every single second of that pod. I appreciate them. Hold on a second, let me send this tweet out. I appreciate them. Also, we got a new subscriber last week, so shout out. If you're watching this in the future, past or present, please like and subscribe. Hopefully, if you're liking and subscribing in the future, it means that I am ridiculously rich and famous, and I've already completed my ultimate mission, which if some of you do and don't know, the ultimate mission of the Broke Boys Sports Podcast is to sign a $100 million contract and then never do the podcast again. So the job and goal and mission is to do the best and then do nothing. So I think that's called the American dream, right? Well, what's left of it, we'll see. Hold on a second. Sorry. Sending out more tweets. I would also like to. Damn, dude. All right, never mind. I would also like to say, luckily we didn't get hacked, guys. Last week we did not get hacked. There was something that happened. I think my Chrome updated and it booted me out of everything that I was logged into. So I had to go back and log into everything. If you're at home, wait, hold on a second. I'm trying to see if I can actually come in 720p on my YouTube real quick. I think that's what's going to happen. All right, man. I'm closing the YouTube video and we're about to start the timer. And, when I say the timer, I mean, we're just going to take it from the top. You guys know the drill. If you don't know the drill, I watched every single play from week 7 of this current week of the NFL season. And I plan to keep doing that until I run out of weeks. Is it week 7? I feel like I keep saying week 7 and it's not week 7. NFL schedule. Because even the top of my notes. No, it was week 7. All right, I'm not crazy. Week 7 has started because Thursday Night Football happened. By the way, it is 3:44 in the morning on Friday. So this pod and its niche audience, I appreciate you guys for checking it out whenever you do check it out, because we have had more listeners than the previous week every week since I started doing this. And I'm going to keep doing it until I guess people stop watching. Anyway, we have a series of things going on and we're going to get started. We have 4:20 on the clock, which means that we should be done with this pod at 4:45 my time here in Houston. And let's take it from the top. 3, 2, 1. Starting to talk, we got the 4 different categories that we split games up into. If you don't know, it's snooze fest, which are the most boring games of the week, obviously. There's heartbreakers, the games that are heartbreaking maybe in terms of their ending, heartbreaking in terms of some of the injuries that happened throughout the course of it. More importantly, we're getting closer and closer to week 10, which means we're getting closer and closer to the heartbreaking level of games where the team breaks. Like you start to see people do stuff that they're not supposed to be doing when they're on the field. People start jogging over towards tackles. In particular, you start to see rookies get into the game a lot more than they should, because the vets are not going to get re-signed, and people got contract incentives and teams are trying trying to prevent vets from being able to pick up those incentives and all that kind of stuff like that. So the game begins because at the end of the day, it is the NFL is a shark tank, and sometimes the deadliest tank that you can be in is in your own locker room, depending upon that. So that's the Heartbreakers category. We got Oh My, where the result is interesting for a flurry of reasons. Today we got some that are interesting because it signifies something about that team improving. I know the Bears are in the Oh My category off the top of my head. And then we have the this right here. This is what we're here for category. These are the games that I believe were so good that they actually helped make NFL fans, more NFL fans. And surprisingly enough, the Arizona Cardinals made this list today. So strange. If you're in the chat, in the comments, watching live, whatever it may be, make sure you like and subscribe. Check out the show. I appreciate everybody who checks us out. Every single second that you're here, I appreciate it because it gets me one step closer to my goal, which is, of course, world domination, aka a bunch of money, so I can just watch football for free for the rest of my life. That would be so awesome. Anyway, Snooze Fest off the top. I figured out the way to cut into some of the time that I'm wasting on this pod that turns it into like a 2-hour thing, because I'm trying to do an hour less. It's not skipping through, but summarizing quickly the Snooze Fest games. The Rams played the Jaguars. The Rams, I'm sorry, this game was in London. The Rams and the Jaguars were both on a football field at the same time. Only one of the teams came to play, and it was the LA Rams. I will say this much. This is yet another week where the Jaguars defense doesn't do something absolutely absurd like get 3 turnovers in a singular game, and then the offense magically cannot do anything. It's almost like the offense was bad the entire time. The distribution of the ball is still there for the Jaguars in terms of offense and stuff like that. But yeah, this was a bad game, and I already told you guys my rule. I watch most of these games on replays after the games are over with. As a matter of fact, I watch vast majority of the NFL games that I watch on Wednesday. I watch what's on my TV in my area. Sundays, Mondays, and Thursdays I have Prime and stuff like that, and then I watch the Seahawks game separately as well. So I always have my fingers crossed that the Seahawks and the Texans don't play at the same time, and considering how their seasons are going, they won't be seeing each other anytime soon in terms of like conflict of time based off of how the Texans season is going. So yeah, the Rams, other than that, if it's an 8 a.m. game, you know what I do? When I wake up on Sundays like I normally do, which is somewhere around 9:30 to 10, which is like halfway through the London game, and I text the group chat for my fantasy football league, and I'm like, hey, what did I miss? And they give me the funniest recap of what is going on. A lot of the times it's them, somebody just types in like yelling and screaming into the chat because somebody's getting completely destroyed in fantasy because of a game that's going on in London, which happened. There's a guy who's in our league who was playing against Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford had 4 touchdowns in this game, by the way, and 3 of them went to Devontae Adams. So that was the thing too. Not only did the Jaguars not generate any turnovers in the course of this game, the other part that was really interesting about it is something that happens with like Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan type teams. They hit you with the Autobots rollout. They transform into a totally different football team than they were the week before. That's versatility, and that's why it's important. That's why Bill Belichick was so good when he was at the top of his game, because his team could look completely different from week to week in the NFL playoffs, and you wouldn't know what he was going to try and do. The key part that I wanted to point out, what the Rams were doing was using 21 personnel. You're going to hear that a bunch as the season goes along. 21 personnel just means double tight end formations. It means there are 2 tight ends and 1 running back, and then every other spot that's available, so that's 2 other spots that's available to make up the 7 players that are not on the line of scrimmage is are their wide receivers. So they use double tight end a bunch in this one. It helps out so much, especially with your offensive line. It helps really disrupt the rush lanes, which are the way that pass rushers get to quarterbacks. You know how you see quarterbacks or defensive linemen run the loop at the combine, where they run in a circle like a little hula hoop, and they pick up a towel and put the towel down. And why that's important, it's to run in an organized fashion and rush the passer in an organized fashion so that the pocket kind of gets formed, and you can crush the quarterback while they're in the pocket, as opposed to, 3 people go at this pace and one guy goes at this pace, and it makes the pocket look like all wonky and stuff, and it gives a rush lane for the QB to escape. Not that Matthew Stafford's going to go anywhere. He sleeps in a magical time chamber when he's not, magical time Winnebago, when he's not on the field. So it's not like he's going to take off and run, but he will do it regardless of the after effects of it. Anyway, that happened a bunch of times where the tight ends are able to push the defensive ends even further out than they actually want to go, and it generates more time in the pocket of a clean pocket for the quarterback. And you'll see that happening like across the league, especially for teams that actually have 2 good tight ends, and they're finding ways to get them on the field because it's hard to come up with 2 X and a Y wide receiver, XYZ wide receiver, especially as time goes on. You see teams like the 49ers, most of their guys are hurt. Them running double tight end makes the most sense for them because they have a running back who they can depend upon, and it buys more time for Mac Jones in the pocket. But in this case, Matthew Stafford got more time, and it was just more time to kick the Jaguars' ass. At no point was this game even relatively close. But yeah, like the Jaguars magically stopped generating turnovers, and all of a sudden they don't score points anymore. Who would have thought? It's almost like turnovers help you score points in the NFL or something like that. He got a season low 8 carries. This is Travis Etienne, because the Jaguars have been repeatedly abandoning the run in a lot of these games, and it actually pisses me off a lot because the only good part of their offense that we've seen so far is the short yardage stuff that Trevor Lawrence does a good job of distributing the ball, but anything further than like 10 yards, not the move. Everything else after that, it is Travis Etienne. Don't really understand. It's Travis Etienne and Tutin. Tutin's been really good too, but the lack of desire to run the ball is astounding, considering how quickly the Jaguars offense ends up getting on and off the field. Just to give you a glimpse, so the final score in this game was 35-7. You want to take a wild stab in the dark when that 7 points was scored? If you said the fourth quarter, you're correct. It was Travis Hunter's first NFL touchdown late in the middle of the fourth quarter, not late in the fourth quarter. And once again, if the Jaguars had 4 more quarters, they'd still be losing this game because they wouldn't have been anywhere. This is what happened to them last week when they played against the Seahawks. They didn't score a touchdown until they got to the fourth quarter, which you can probably continue to expect to happen based off of the way that their offense is run by Trevor Lawrence. That being said, Parker Washington, Travis Hunter, and Brian Thomas, and a little De'Ami Brown, who actually got hurt at one point, they did a really good job when they were given opportunities to get passes in these what we call playmaker routes. They're routes that are either like really short yardage or not scheme dependent. Like you don't have a rub. Like a rub route is a route where the scheme of the play is 2 crossing routes affecting the defensive backs, as opposed to you talk about like running a streak route, which is typically running a 9 route where it comes down to the wide receiver's ability to bend the defensive back, stack them, and all that kind of stuff, and position themselves to be able to catch the ball. Those are playmaker routes, right? And a lot of the routes in the Jaguars offense are playmaker routes, and at least the ones they get thrown to are playmaker routes. But yeah, the Rams transformed in this game. They used 3 different they used 31 personnel a bunch of the time, like it was 1965 in this game a bunch too, which is 3 tight ends up front, and they were in power I. And as you can imagine, it's pretty hard to stop. It was hard to stop Kyren Williams before. It's even more difficult when there are 3 extra blockers essentially on every single play. And when you add in the fact that you don't know which one of those blockers could potentially turn into a receiver, because there are block and release routes when it comes to tight ends as well. And you never know what the play action is going to do. Remember, what is it, Darren? Is it Warren Sharp, the guy who's the smart football guy online? Remember, he tried to convince everybody that play action doesn't work, and then every football player in the world was like, "Oh yeah, it definitely works." It's just about whether or not. It's about who you're play faking to. Anyway, the Rams ran away with this one like almost immediately. Kyren Williams at no point was like relatively stopped, and the Jaguars couldn't generate any turnovers, so they didn't have any offense. That's pretty much it. I don't think I had anything else. I have a bunch of notes on here, but I'm not going to read them all because I'm trying to power through this. But yeah, that's what they did. Devontae Adams is back because Puka Nacua is hurt, so there was a lot more time where Matthew Stafford was focusing on the connection between him and Devontae Adams a lot. Oh, by the way, Devontae Adams scored 2 touchdowns off of the dreaded fade route. A lot of people were ball knowers on the internet say that the fade route is dead. Devontae Adams disagrees. Devontae Adams, who is taller and bigger and stronger and also jumps higher than most of the DBs that he goes up against, heavily disagrees with you about the fade route. Anyway, the Rams ran the ball 24 times, and it felt like they pushed up the middle like pretty easily. Even though Foyo Oluokun was there a bunch of times, it felt like the offensive line from the Rams was just destroying them. Travis Hunter had a great game, but it was like for nothing. It was like a drop in the bucket for the ocean of offense that was missing for the Jaguars to be competitive in this one. And yeah, it was tough, man, and it was tough for Trevor Lawrence. You can say you can chalk it up to decision making, which you probably can pretty much every single week when it comes to the Jaguars. You can also chalk it up to the fact that he got sacked 7 times in this game too. So this is probably the time where I bring up Byron Young. Byron Young, one of the young defensive linemen for the Rams, he got drafted last year. He has actually got 9 sacks on the season, which is insane. 9 sacks by week 7. Remember, the NFL record is 22.5 that I think was set by J.J. Watt and tied by Chandler Jones at one point. Just something to think about. Byron Young is really good. And there's also one other player that we're going to talk about a little bit later on that's pretty close to he's tied with Byron Young for 9 sacks at this point during the season. Moving on, snooze fest game. The Lions pretty much dismantled the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A lot of Buccaneers injuries are starting to pile up. Mike Evans is done for the season. He broke his clavicle during this game, which means that the 1,000 yards every season he's been in the NFL streak will come to an end, sadly, which is just one of the more heartbreaking things. One of Galveston's finest. If you're from Houston, if you don't know that, Mike Evans is from G-Town, man, and used to play basketball. If you haven't heard his story, he played basketball when he was in Galveston for a long time. His Galveston ball basketball team was really good. I think they went to like the state semifinals and lost. And everybody on that team was like going to play college basketball, but I think Mike was going like D2 or something like that. He went to one football camp for Texas A&M and got offered on the spot, and then he became the number 1 wide receiver when Johnny Manziel was the starting quarterback. And most of his college career, they spent asking whether or not Mike Evans was the reason Johnny was so good, or if it was Johnny making plays. And then they both got drafted to different teams, and then Mike Evans is a Hall of Famer, and Johnny Manziel kind of washed out of the NFL. Happens, but we found out the answer. Anyway, the Detroit Lions were heavily injured as well in this game. One of the key things that kept happening, one of the most amazing things was most of the secondary for the Detroit Lions is hurt and was unavailable for this game, and they found more defensive backs that they can depend upon, which is a great sign for a team that's drafting low in the draft because of how well they did the season before, but didn't get the benefit of winning the Super Bowl or anything like that. They went out there. That means they're doing their homework. That means they're developing players. That means they're also going out there and picking guys who are really going to buy into what it means to play for the Detroit Lions. And they're going out there and doing their thing. It's more people they can depend upon later on in the season, because a lot of what helped, or a lot of what dismantled the Lions in the back half of the season was how many people kept getting hurt, which is still happening. But when you have backups that are competent, and not only that, but were amazing in man coverage against a really good passing team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that goes a long way. Also want to say, Buccaneers are still banged up. They got Tristan Wirfs back. You could see the difference, but Aiden Hutchinson was all over the place. He was killing it, man. The other part is the top 3 wide receivers for the Buccaneers were out vast majority of this game, because Emeka Egbuka went out at one point. Chris Godwin wasn't out there, and Mike Evans got hurt. So it was like Sterling Shepard, who, don't pretend like you don't know who Sterling Shepard is. Everybody knows who Sterling Shepard is. Stop lying. And then Tez Johnson, who has shown up and played big in a lot of these games, but to depend upon him as quickly when you lose that much talent when you lose Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Emeka Egbuka all in like the span of like one game, and you have all that talent that just drops off, to expect 2 guys that you know are good to step up and fill up that gap is crazy. Absurd. It is. This is a high-quality bounce-back win for the Detroit Lions. Remember, they got fucking mollywopped by the Chiefs last week, and it was pretty much over by halftime for them. Jahmyr Gibbs continues to have what looks like it's going to be a career year for him. He's going to go for, it looks like he's going to have 1,000 yards. He might lead the league in rushing touchdowns when it's all said and done. That does suck for David Montgomery, because it feels like every week, other than those 2 weeks where he was with the Bengals, or when they played against the Bengals and he was back at home in Cincinnati, and the week after that, it seems like they kind of don't let them play as much as they should. Other boring games that happened for week 7. The Colts play the Chargers. This score is highly deceptive. It was not this close at any point. This is just the final score kind of result thing. This is the wild part about it. We can go through the notes and everything. The Colts ran away with this one early, and the Chargers had to load up the cannons, and they just had to start firing, bro. They are still at this point. They've got Joe Alt back now, but at this point they didn't have him back. The Colts, the Chargers offense really struggled with the pass protection vast majority of this game, and that's how the Colts were able to run away with this one. Also, I think I finally understand the Colts offense. It's all centered around the run game, obviously, because Jonathan Taylor's dominating. But Jonathan Taylor, they start off using Jonathan Taylor and the offensive line's one, ability to separate the D linemen from each other, but two, to get up to the second level. If you watch a lot of the film, when Jonathan Taylor gets loose, he's actually going up against safeties more often than linebackers in one-on-one situations, because the linebackers are either going the opposite direction because they fell for the fakes, or they've gotten scooped up by an offensive lineman, right? And that happens a bunch, or they're getting taken out by tight ends around the edge. That mixed in with some of the short yardage stuff, like we see Josh Downs that likes to run those curl routes down the sideline, all that kind of stuff like that. The playmaker routes, if you will, the swing routes, the flat routes, the curls and everything like that underneath the sticks. The whole time while this is going on, and this is how their offense continuously works every single step of the way that we've seen so far. While they're using the short yardage stuff, Tyler Warren is kind of blocking on some of them. And then some of them he's blocking and releasing, and some of them he's just running straight routes. Some of them he's backside, some of them he's the front side player, and the line is having a tough time telling when Tyler Warren is breaking out to be a potential pass threat, right? While they're focused on trying to stop Jonathan Taylor, Tyler Warren is running a lot of these backside routes. Like we've seen him run some out routes that have turned into huge gains because the flow of the offense is going with Jonathan Taylor, because play action does work despite what people will tell you on the internet. And that just sets up people underneath to get big yardage. The other stuff is they run their crossing routes in a specific way. They run their crossers at the depth of the linebackers. So when it's an obvious pass down and the linebackers are dropping back in the zone coverage, they are running their crossing routes directly in front of the linebackers, so the linebackers activate and try and cover the person that's directly in front of them, because they can't cover the person that's behind them. And so while there's crossing routes going opposite, there's a deeper route that goes in typically or out, and it takes advantage of the space where the linebackers drop down to cover the two crossing routes, and the safeties have to stay high to cover the outside wide receivers, and it creates all the space. That it's like some variation of that throughout the course of the game, and it's just about the fact that defenses cannot figure out what is happening when. Plus, the defenses just can't straight up stop Jonathan Taylor on their own. The number of times we've seen this season where safeties have tried to shoulder down Jonathan Taylor and it has not worked is ridiculous. I swear, I feel like he's got 5 touchdowns off safeties thinking that they can hit him hard enough that he falls down. He just doesn't. But yeah, that's what the Colts did vast majority of this game. A lot of people were talking about after this game about how this was really embarrassing for the Chargers. This is terrible. And I'm like, this is what the Colts have done to every team that they have played this season outside of the Broncos. This is not embarrassing. They just played the Colts just played regular offense. They haven't been stifled. They haven't been really stopped by anybody. And it's because of the balance. They are the most balanced offense in the NFL. And, it helps out Daniel Jones, who clearly has some talent and some skill that other people were able to see that I wasn't able to see, that a bunch of other people weren't able to see either. But to sit here and be like, oh, this is a damning moment for the Chargers defense, it's not. They're just playing. They are a defense that's playing against an offense that is better than them, and a league that is designed for offenses to win. And that's what happened. Vast majority of the first half of this game, they spent up against the wall because the Chargers defense turned the ball over, or Chargers offense turned the ball over twice in the first half of this game as well. So they gave free possessions to a team that doesn't need free possessions, right? And it burned them in the end. That's actually what created the separation when it was all said and done. There was a lot of time, because the second half happened. Basically, the Chargers go out there, they go into the locker room, they come out, they start playing football like the first half just didn't happen, because the Colts throughout the course of this game, they punted the ball twice. I think they got like 12 possessions in total and punted the ball twice. The Chargers, the whole first possession, the whole first half was just like non-existent. It was 20-3 at halftime of this game, and you can see they scored 21 points in the second half of this one. They started playing a lot more aggressively. They started moving the ball a lot more efficiently as well. They were able to get a couple of plays that looked like they would have ended up in the end zone in the first half, but then Nick Cross and Grover Stewart actually deflected a pass up into the air and caught his own deflected pass to intercept Justin Herbert on the first drive. The Colts score off the ensuing drive, and then the next drive, which turns out to be the final drive of the half, they go down the field. They get 44 yards off 2 pass plays. They are at the Colts 10-yard line. Quentin Johnston looks like he's about to catch another touchdown this season, and Nick Cross is in perfect trail position. He snatches that shit, and it ends the half, pretty much. So, yeah, and the Colts get back-to-back interceptions going into halftime. About as low as you can possibly feel as an offense is what the Chargers should have been feeling like when they went into that locker room, and then they came out, and they played better in the second half than they did in the first. Yes, some of it was due to the Colts backing off and all that kind of stuff like that, but they took advantage of the defense that was put in front of them. A team that can score 3 touchdowns in the second half of a game is pretty impressive regardless of how big the lead was for the opponent. The only issue was they couldn't get the defensive stops that they needed in the back half either. So, like I said, 38-24, highly deceptive. It was never close. It looked good for Justin Herbert because he eventually ends up passing for the most passing yards he's ever had in the NFL, which is great for him because it carried over into Thursday Night Football, which we'll talk about next week, right? But yeah, the pass rush was on them like almost instantaneously. They had a tough time running the ball because the Colts defensive line is insane. But yeah, another big win for the Colts. They are, there's only 2 teams that have a 4-game win streak, and it's the Chicago Bears and, who is it? Sorry, I have it written down. Anyway, we'll talk about it when we get to it later. I do have our Who Player of the Week. Imagine the Snoop Dogg meme. It's our player of the week that like randomly did really well in this game and nobody really understands why, and maybe you don't know as much about him. I got Oronde Gadsden the second. He's a tight end for the Chargers, 6'5". He's our Player of the Week. He actually had a career high catches and yards, and he had 2 touchdowns in this game. He's a second-gen NFL player. His dad was a wide receiver. Some of you older guys who have watched before, he actually played for the Dolphins back in like 2001 or something like that. He played for the Dolphins in like the early 2000s, and he played football in the late because he was a UDFA in 1995. So he played for a while in the NFL. He actually had some crazy-ass injuries, too, and he played in the AFL, too. He was Rookie of the Year. This is his dad, who actually, and I spent so much time looking this up. His dad went to, like, Winston-Salem State College, which is a HBCU. And some of you heard that name and you probably thought exactly what I thought when I heard it. That's the college that Stephen A. Smith went to when he played college basketball. And it is. Stephen A. Smith graduated from Winston-Salem in 1991. And at that point, somehow he was already writing for the Philadelphia Inquirer, which is crazy to think about. A college kid writing for one of the biggest newspapers in the entire country, right? But that's Stephen A.'s life. I don't think anybody else can replicate that kind of experience. That's a product of the time long past. But it'd be like a 21-year-old writing for the Washington Post, which I do know somebody who graduated and started working for the Washington Post, but she was like 24, 25. Anyway, 1991, Stephen A. Smith graduates from Winston-Salem. That's actually Oronde Gadsden's dad's, which is his name is Oronde Gadsden, right? He's Oronde Gadsden the second, Gadsden the second. His dad went for his freshman year of college, Stephen A. Smith's graduating year. So there's a pretty high chance because Oronde Sr. went to Winston-Salem for basketball initially. He had like a basketball scholarship, and then he switched to football his sophomore year. So there's a pretty high percentage chance because Stephen A. Smith was technically on the college basketball team at Winston-Salem for a good chunk of time. He actually blew his kneecap out. I think he said he did it twice, and that's what ended his career. And, so like that happened. They could have potentially been, they definitely were on campus at some point at the same exact time. And don't know if they knew each other. That'd be kind of crazy all these years later. You'd be like, oh, you're the guy who I used to hoop with. Now your son's in the NFL. Anyway, after he made it to the NFL too, second-gen NFL player is crazy, man. I wonder if Max Williams, if you guys remember Max Williams, he's a tight end. Yeah, he still is. I think he broke his leg last year. He's a tight end that got drafted for the Cardinals. He was a third-generation NFL player. Like, his grandfather played for Curly Lambeau. The guy that Lambeau Field is named after, his grandfather played for him. And then his dad played in the NFL, and then he played in the NFL. So he was a third generation. And I think something like his uncle played too. Somebody looked that up. It's Max Williams with 2 X's. But yeah, it's kind of crazy. Second-gen NFL player is pretty wild, especially considering he's got a pretty illustrious background leading up to this as well. He grew up in Florida. He actually went to American Heritage. Some of you guys may know what American Heritage. By the way, his dad won a Super Bowl too. His dad actually played on the 1995 Dallas Cowboys team. He was a UDFA, and then he got elevated to play in the NFC Championship game. And then he got a high ankle sprain and couldn't play in the Super Bowl. But he did get a Super Bowl ring, and he's a Super Bowl champion his rookie season. That's pretty fly. He said Michael Irvin taught him a lot about playing wide receiver in the NFL, which is pretty cool. And one thing I always say about Michael Irvin. He may have been wild, but that dude was dedicated to hooping. He knew how, he wanted the ball. He knew how to ball. Anyway, he almost played at NFL Europe at one point. Then he went to the AFL. Then he made his way back into the NFL because I think in the AFL he was like Rookie of the Year. And then when he came back to the NFL to the Dolphins, is who he initially played for. I think he didn't play enough games his first time he was in the NFL, and so he was 27 years old by the time he came back to play for the Dolphins, and he was a rookie by NFL standards, which is weird, but true. If you only played in the NFC Championship game, it makes sense that you wouldn't be like a second-year player. Anyway, he ends up playing for the Dolphins, and he becomes like the number 2 wide receiver for the Dolphins for like 4 years straight. He actually ends up catching Dan Marino's final touchdown pass too, which is kind of crazy. Crazy things to overlap. But now his son is in the NFL. What a wild life. His son went to American Heritage, which is like a super high school, like a high-end. If you guys don't know, it's one of the super duper high-end high schools that are specifically for sports, essentially. He played football for them. He won 2 state championships in Florida. His head coach there was Patrick Surtain. Yeah, that guy's dad. Patrick Surtain Jr.'s dad. Yeah. Crazy, right? Anyway, he also played lacrosse and track, which is kind of crazy to think about a 6'5" future NFL player playing lacrosse against a bunch of private school kids, because that's exactly what that was. Like I said, they won 2 state titles. He also ran track. I don't know what events he ran. Oh, wait, actually, dude, he ran hurdles. 6'5" running hurdles. Wild. Long legs, though. That pans out. Anyway, that's our player of the week. So next time you see him, he was a 3-star wide receiver coming out of high school, ended up at Syracuse. Didn't really do too much when he was at Syracuse, just because that's how college can be sometimes for it can be like that sometimes for tight ends and stuff like that, because sometimes you show up, you're a 6'5" wide receiver, and then you become a 6'5" tight end, and you're trying to transition and learn all these different skills and stuff like that. This dude clearly put a ton of work into his ability and his skill and stuff like that, but he's essentially like a football player grown in a fucking lab. Like, all the people around him who are football centric, his father being an exceptional football player his entire life, and then now he's got that. Plus, his sister is a social worker. Like, she's a social worker for kids and stuff, which is pretty cool. I think that's pretty cool. Sounds like he comes from like a pretty grounded family if you got like a social worker in your family. Anyway, that's all I had on that game. I don't really want to talk about it anymore. The Colts fucking dominated. They didn't actually they cut through the Chargers like a hot knife through butter. A lot of people were making fun of the Chargers because they wore their all yellow lights out uniforms or whatever. No, it's not lights out. It's the charged up uniforms that everybody hates so much. I don't really care that much. I think they're pretty cool. I just wish they would customize the helmets with it, which they never do, because you can't change the helmets mid-season, which I think is so dumb. They usually have like the golden face mask that goes with one of the other ones or whatever, which is I thought it was going to be, but it didn't happen. Moving on, let's talk about heartbreakers. The heartbreaker games, I'll take it from the top, man. I don't even need to look at the notes on this one. The Houston Texans generated 4 turnovers on defense. One of them turned into a touchdown. For them, they fell on a fumble that they forced inside the end zone. They actually had another couple of plays that should have been safeties but weren't called it because NFL referees, if there's one thing that they're going to do, they are going to make sure that wide receivers don't get called for fumbles, and they are going to make sure with every breath that is within them that there is never a safety surrendered in the NFL. Too bad for them. That happened a little bit later in the Cowboys game. Whatever. Monday Night Football is happening. I already know how this game is going to go because I, like many other people, have been watching the Texans all season, and I'm not delusional about what they look like. They're coming off a 2-game win streak, which is great for them. Great feeling. It keeps them alive. I don't even know for what, bro, because honestly, man, it looks like the Texans are going to be picking like top 10. Based off the way the offense is running right now, it looks like they're going to be picking top 10 in the draft, which is crazy to think about because they clearly have a top 3 defense in the NFL. They went up against one of the best offensive teams in the league, with potentially the number 1 wide receiver in the league when it's all said and done. They only gave up 27 points, and they got 4 turnovers off of a guy who had barely turned the ball over all season coming into that game. And they scored a touchdown on defense. And they still lost by 1 possession. And most of it was due to the efforts of the defense. The run game wasn't there today just because the Seahawks defense is, if there is one defense that is better than the Texans in the NFL, it is the Seahawks defense. So this was basically the number 1 and the number 2 defense in the NFL duking it out with each other, and their offense is along for the ride, and the right offense won. The Seahawks offense is far more consistent, a lot better overall, has more talent, and has been more consistent in terms of getting up and down the field. But I digress. I don't really have too much else to say about that game. It fucking pissed me off, man. I watched every single second of it, too, because these are my 2 favorite teams playing against each other, and I knew what was going to happen the entire time because the Texans, there's no surprise in what the Texans have done this season or what they are this season, and that's really sad. But moving on, I saved myself a bunch of time and you a bunch of time as well. The Carolina Panthers played the New York Jets, and they held thousands of people hostage while they duked it out. Chuba Hubbard is back, which is kind of awkward a little bit because Rico Dowdle's had like 400 fucking yards of offense in 2 games. So it's kind of weird to be like, hey, you can't lose your job to injury, which is the go-to phrase in case you're new to football. You don't lose your job to injury, you lose your job to performance. This one is tough because the performance by the backup was insane. The performance by the backup the last 2 weeks handed them the win. Anyway, the Panthers are on a 2-game win streak, and they are undefeated at home, by the way. Pretty impressive. This game is on the road. The Jets are, checks notes, winless. 0 wins. 0. I will say this. One thing that's really weird about this, and I think it is, I've heard people critique and criticize the defense of the Jets, and I think it's moronic. 5 of their last 6 losses have been by 7 points or less, which is crazy to think about because if you watch the Jets game at any point this season, and there's no way that you saw that team and you thought to yourself, this is going to be a close game. Even in that game, where they got 9 sacks on Justin Fields, it still came down to the last drive because that's how good their defense is this season. But most of you dumb fucks out there talking about how you don't think Aaron Glenn is good at his job, which is so textbook for this type of situation. If you know, you know. If you're a black person, you know. If you're a person of color, you know. Aaron Glenn signed up to take one of the worst jobs in the NFL, and now he's going to, they're going to try and put him out the pasture here. Say that he sucks at his job despite all the evidence. Just like they did with Todd Bowles. And then he won a Super Bowl. And now he's got potentially an MVP on his team after rebuilding the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for like the 3rd time. Anyway, I'm just saying, if there was one team you wouldn't trust the judgment of in terms of what they think is good and what they think is bad, the Jets would be at the top of my list. It'd be the Jets, and then 1B right underneath it, the Browns. Anyway, the first play of this game is, by some miracle, a completed pass by Justin Fields. Not a swing route, not a check down, just like a 7-yard out route. Real quarterback shit, which is crazy because all they needed was like 3 of those last week and they probably would have won when they were in London. Anyway, don't worry. They turn it over on downs on drive number 1 of this game. I think that tells you pretty much everything you need to know about it. The Panthers don't get a first drive touchdown, which is kind of sad because they felt like they kind of had a little bit of momentum going on their first drive touchdown. They do get a field goal. They've had like 3 games out of the 7 they've played so far where they got a touchdown. They had 2 where they got a field goal. So Tyrod Taylor does come into this game at one point, and it is not because of performance yet. He comes in because Justin Fields got hit while he was after he slid, and so he got pulled out. He got pulled out of the game by the independent neurological consultant. There we go. I know words. He got pulled out of the game for that to be tested for concussion. Then he came back. Justin Fields came back in. As a matter of fact, speaking of quarterbacks not playing, neither one of the starting quarterbacks of this game actually makes it to the end of it, for 2 very different reasons. The Jets line has their worst performance of the season, in case you are wondering why they only scored 6 points, which matched the number of sacks they surrendered. Yes, they gave up 9 sacks, but remember last week when you go back and you watch a lot of those games, you watch why those sacks got given up. It is because Justin Fields held onto the ball for like 6 seconds in the pocket, which is always just going to absolutely end up with bad things happening. That's just how it is. In the pocket for 6 seconds is bad. Having the ball and running outside of the pocket, which Justin Fields is fully capable of for 6 seconds, totally cool. But staying in the pocket for 6 seconds is asking to get completely sandwiched by the multiple defensive linemen, which is exactly what happened in this game. 6 sacks. You got to take some credit for that. That's 15 sacks in the last 2 games. Crazy shit, right? You would think if you've been hit that many times by like really fast, strong, and agile defensive linemen, you would get the fuck out of the way instead of just continuing to take the sledgehammer to the chest. But what do I know? I'm just a fat dude who talks about football on the internet. The Jets are going to get some D linemen late in this season, their contract incentives, and honestly, that's the least they can do for making all the fans watch their games this season. There's going to be somebody who's going to have a very Merry Christmas because, well, somebody's going to be having a great No, it'll be Christmas. Somewhere around Christmas, New Year's, Valentine's Day. They're going to have a great vacation in the offseason because more than likely, whoever hits that contract incentive, they probably not make it to the playoffs. Anyway, shout out to the Jets offensive line. They about to get a bunch of people paid this season. Unfortunately, it will come at the cost of their own jobs, I'm sure. Anyway, back to football. Well, it was kind of football. Andy Dalton takes over after Bryce Young goes down with a high ankle sprain. It looks like Andy Dalton's going to be in there for a couple weeks, which is a big bummer, not only because I think Bryce Young actually for the first time in his career is better than Andy Dalton as of right now. We'll see what happens. You know how it is nowadays. Backup veteran quarterbacks come in and all of a sudden teams start winning and they look way better with the vets in there. Anyway, that being said, Bryce goes down in this one, and it really felt like there was a lot of moments where Bryce was kind of building on things. You know, he had the game-winning drive last week, and now he's kind of putting it all together. And then to have this kind of a setback is very similar to what we saw in his rookie season and the season after that as well, which is kind of dumb. But it does happen. You can't do anything about injuries except work hard, which I'm sure Bryce is doing. But yeah, the Panthers are slowly improving. They're getting more talent. Who would have thought you get more talented wide receivers and your quarterback gets a little bit better at throwing the ball? Xavier Legette, Tyrone McMillan looking pretty good out there. And still waiting on a tight end to kind of emerge. Not going to lie. Still kind of waiting on one of these tight ends because Tommy Trimble's been there on the team forever. And, we'll talk about that later when I have more time. Jets linebacker, got to give a shout out to some of these defensive players. Jets linebacker Jamie Sherwood, who's the guy who's taken over for Quincy Williams. He's the linebacker. Quinnen is the D lineman. Quincy Williams' spot. He's been playing out his fucking mind. He started 16 games last season. He's currently on pace for 179 total tackles, which is crazy. He was a 5th round pick in 2021. That's money well spent. Good job on the Jets, man. You got to give credit where credit is due. You know, they're not messing up at every single step of the way. But shout out to Jamie Sherwood. Hopefully you go to a better team next year, my boy. The Jets are a legit contender to go 0-17 because despite how good their defense is, at some point during this season, their will break. They're in the heartbreaker category because this might be that week. We'll find out. This might be the week where we didn't see it, but it broke him internally. Saw Woody Johnson talking shit after the game, which is funny because I still think at Justin Fields' very young age, he's achieved way more than Woody Johnson ever has in his life. But what do I know? Just the fat guy on the internet. But for the most part, man, this could be the last week that we see a competitive Jets team. Tyrod Taylor is probably going to be the starting quarterback this upcoming week, which will get them on the path to being able to win games. But 0-17 is definitely on the table for these dudes. And you can't even blame the defense. I think they've given up like less than 3 touchdowns in the last 3 games or something like that. So, come on, dude. What do you expect? The Panthers continue to be strange as fuck to me. I don't really understand if they're good or they're bad. I think they're somewhere below average, but I can't tell. If you can tell me what you think. Hit me up in the comments. Like and subscribe. Hit the bell for the notifications. Tell me what you think. The Panthers seem like they're a run-centered team, and when they're able to run the ball, everything else works fine. But when they cannot run the ball, bad things happen for everybody. Specifically, Bryce Young. Moving on, another sad game. The Browns. Not going out sad. 31-6, Miami Dolphins. This could be the last week we see a Dolphins team that tries. We will find out. I think they're going on their bye week. A lot of people speculating that's when they're going to fire Mike McDaniel. Hope that's not the case. Hope Mike gets to finish out the season. Just because, what are the Dolphins going to do? They're kind of whatever. There's a series of issues on this team. And I think some of it has to do with pass blocking, but that's just me. I watch the Dolphins every single week, and every week I see some moment where the ball gets snapped and a defensive lineman runs directly at Tua without being touched by a single offensive lineman. Every single week. And sometimes it happens multiple times in a single game. Well, take it from a shitty offensive lineman. You got to at least try to touch him, you know what I mean? Yeah, I played O-line in college, so trust me, I know a thing or two about sucking at pass blocking. The score is not deceptive in this case. I know I say the score is deceptive in a lot of cases. This score is accurate. This score is exactly what happened. It was raining in this game. There was not a lot of passing. Dylan Gabriel did not look good. He almost got intercepted like twice. Tua got intercepted 3 times, but that wasn't the problem. You know what the problem is. Say it with me, folks. The Miami Dolphins cannot stop the run. So, yeah. Anyway, Quinshon Judkins ran for 75 yards and 2 touchdowns on 18 carries in the first half of this game. Tough. Worst part was 63 of those yards came on 2 plays. 63 out of 75 came on 2. So that's 2 carries for 63 yards and 16 carries for whatever else is left over. 12 yards. Crazy work. Isn't it wild how numbers work? How you can be really good more often than not, but two fuck-ups make you look terrible. They had 2 plays where they lost track of Quinshon Judkins. And he had a career day. That was the first half, by the way. The second half was... Obviously, they kept running the ball. The first play of the second half of those games was a bobbled pass that became a pick 6. So, shout out Tyson Campbell, who got traded from the Jaguars to the Browns from one hell to another. Sorry, bro. I don't know who your agent is. Hopefully, you're about to sign for a bigger deal with the Browns. Maybe that's why they traded you. At least you're playing on a defense that's good. I don't know about the whole hoping that the offense is going to figure it out. Anyway, like I said, first play of this half, or no. Yeah, the first play in the second half, it was a throw attempt to Malik Washington. Malik Washington either didn't see where the ball was coming from, but he put his hands out, he bobbled it, and it was intercepted by Tyson Campbell. He ran it back for a touchdown. He was barely touched. So, yeah. I think the soul of the Dolphins may be crushed. I don't know, man. The Browns had 4 drives that started in Miami territory. Half of the Dolphins' drives were 3 plays or less throughout the course of this game. I'll say this. The Browns' defensive line penetration was pretty insane this entire game. They took away Devon Achane in a rainy game, and it forced the Dolphins to try and move the ball by passing it, which didn't go well because they struggle to pass it when the ball is bone dry. The Dolphins couldn't use A-Chain to get like any of the short yardage stuff either, and so Tua had to figure out a bunch of different ways to do that while also avoiding a defensive line that was dominating his offensive line. Play calling can't fix the skill gap between the Browns defense and the Miami Dolphins offense, and it showed. 31-6. Sorry to anybody who went to that game and watched it and remained sober the whole time, because I know there's some dad or mom out there that took their kids to that game that, maybe they were a Dolphins fan or something like that. There's Dolphins fans all over the place, but you took your kids to that game and the Browns beat the living shit out of the Dolphins in front of you, and it didn't even look cool. They had like 3 good plays throughout the course of this entire game. Whatever. Browns fans are just happy to see the team win, I'm sure. They're probably going nuts on radio because I'll say this. Browns fans just figured out that they're tanking, or like a couple weeks ago. They just figured out their team is intentionally not trying to win games a couple weeks ago, which is interesting considering like all the signs of like, hey man, we got a dude who takes up like 20% of our salary cap. How are we going to get talent on the team? Anyway, moving on. Patriots, Titans. This is a deceptive score. It wasn't the way you thought. The thing did happen. The thing happened. Everybody thought it was going to be belt to ass for the Patriots on the Titans. It was, but, stick with me. The Titans actually were leading vast majority of the first half of this game. They led up until the final drive of the first half, which is crazy because I think that's the longest lead that they've held at any given point. Remember, they fired Brian Callahan after some of the roughest offensive appearances throughout the course of the first 7 weeks or first 6 weeks of the season. I will say this. Offense didn't look much better. They scored 13 points in the first half of the game, which means, you guessed it, they did not score again in this game after halftime, which is fantastic for everybody who was in attendance, I'm sure, watching the home team continue to score while the home team cannot even get a first down. The only touchdown that the Titans scored in this game, I will say, pretty clever. They ran a fake double pass. So they moved the entirety of the offensive line to the left-hand side to cover Tony Pollard, as if Cam Ward was supposed to throw the ball to Tony Pollard and Tony Pollard was supposed to throw it downfield. That was not the case. Cam Ward threw it downfield to DK, who is their kick returner, one of the few bright spots on the team in terms of offense. He got his first NFL touchdown. Shout out to him. I would also like to point out Gunnar Helm, who's a former Patriot, went 1v1 with one of the Patriots linebackers for about 4 seconds to set that play up. Like, completely by himself, nobody to his left or to his right for about 15 yards. Go back and look at that play. Pretty sick. Pretty dope for a tight end to be able to lock up a D lineman like that. Anyway, the Patriots got the ball back. Ramondre Stevenson was running all over the place. He actually was really good today. No fumbles. Big. I think that's 3 weeks in a row with no fumbles for Ramondre Stevenson. Maybe they hit him just a little bit less. But yeah, no fumbles for Ramondre. They were moving the ball kind of at will in the second half. A lot of big passes were completed. Kayshon Boutte had like a massive touchdown catch. Stephon Diggs had a couple of good plays up front. And really what it really came down to is like Drake May was diming up the Tennessee Titans defense in the second half of this game. He was struggling in the first half. I'm not going to lie. He got sacked 4 times over the course of this entire game, which is impressive because once again, it's week 7. There's like no hope whatsoever for the Tennessee Titans, and their defense is still playing crazy good. Like I said, they showed up in the second half. The offense did not. They just got overwhelmed by the number of possessions that the Patriots were getting without any response whatsoever from the offense, and the offense wasn't even taking time off the clock, which is the worst part. Right, like it's one thing to go out there, have like a 10-play drive that fizzles out, you don't even get a field goal out of it. It's another thing to go out there, get a 3 and out, keep them out there for 30 seconds, and then send the defense right back out there. Crazy work, bro. But yeah, the Patriots had everything going. They took advantage of L'Jarius Sneed twice. He got mossed by Hunter Henry, I believe it was. Or I think it was Hunter Henry. He got mossed by Hunter Henry, and then he got mossed by Kayshon Boutte at one point, which is brutal because L'Jarius Sneed famously had that quote earlier this season where they asked him, what was the deal? him going back and forth with another wide receiver, and he's like, well, I get paid, and he doesn't. Like, his argument was that he just makes more money than the other guy. The wackest thing you could possibly say ever. Most of the second half, like I said, Drake may dominate him up. That's pretty much it. I will say this. The Patriots defense got some pressure, and that's what really kind of collapsed the Titans. As you know, the Titans famously really bad at pass blocking. Our guy Milton Williams got another sack. Our guy Milton Williams, he is at 3.5 for the season. Remember, his career high is 5. So when you're watching the Patriots, make sure you look for Milton Williams. He gets paid a lot of money for a reason, and he shows it every single week. Whether he gets a sack or not, Milton Williams shows you why he gets paid what he gets paid. But yeah, the Patriots defense clamped down, and there was nothing that the Titans could do about it. Maybe next week. Speaking of teams talking about maybe next week, I'm not gonna spend too much time on this. The Chiefs beat the fuck out of the Raiders, and Geno Smith didn't even have to turn the ball over for this. This is the worst part. Like, it wasn't like one of those games where like Geno turned the ball over 3 times. Geno went out there and he just got sacked a bunch. The Chiefs looked damn near perfect, and the score reflected that. I think they only had like 2 possessions where they punted the ball away in this one, and as you can tell, they got a shutout defensively, which shouldn't surprise too many people. But yeah, I'm not going to waste my time talking about this game. I'm not going to waste your time talking about it. The biggest sad part about this is I thought the Chiefs were going to be the weakest they've been in a long while, and it definitely proves out. The injuries have made them stronger. The injuries created opportunity and time for other wide receivers to get out there and get some reps and get better. And then the big dogs came back, and now the offense is back at 100%. They even fucking found another running back, Rashad Smith, running back wide receiver type guy. He wears number 24, so it's kind of hard to tell how he personally identifies. But they use him like a wide receiver / running back type dude. And Kareem Hunt is back to taking a lot more carries than Isaiah Pacheco, which is really sad because I like Pacheco. So yeah. Moving on, we got the oh my category. Sorry, I thought I heard somebody call my name. Oh my is typically where we talk about games that have interesting results for interesting reasons that could have some kind of pivotal point to do with do it throughout the season. The 49ers and the Falcons. My biggest reason I said this is oh my. I don't know how many. They can't keep getting away with this. Half their team, not even half, 90% of their team is hurt. They haven't had their starting quarterback in like 4 weeks. He came back for like 1 game and he hasn't been back since. Their backup quarterback is hurt. They've got multiple offensive linemen that are hurt. They lost their best and second best defensive player. They have a bunch of like really young defensive guys out there. Most of their wide receivers are hurt. The only thing that they're holding together and they're holding on to is the fact that Christian McCaffrey, and look, I think I've been seeing the memes. They're pretty funny about how, somebody's got some voodoo going to keep Christian McCaffrey intact because there's no way that everybody else is going down and Christian McCaffrey is the one that's still standing. But the fact of the matter is Christian McCaffrey took most of last year off because of injury. So he's got to be like one of the healthiest guys in the NFL. Moving on, 49ers go out here. They transform. Very Kyle Shanahan-esque. They are a run team now. They went the first 6 weeks of this season. They went the first 5 weeks of this season without a single rushing touchdown. They got 1 rushing touchdown last week. They got 3 this week. They completely changed who they are as a team to take the pressure off Mac Jones to go out there and make plays. And they put one of the best running backs in the best possible situation. They had a backup center come out there and look nasty up front. And I just... Look, man, I know this is supposed to be the year by, like, the magical numbers. Like, you go back and you look at it, like, the 49ers do this thing where, like, they suck and then they go to the NFC Championship game. I'm starting to think that might happen. They went out there and they beat a very good Falcons team who actually put up a pretty good fight. I know the score doesn't indicate it, but they put up a pretty good fight overall and were pretty effective up front. They just couldn't finish in the red zone. And then later on, the pressure started building up. The other big issue was the Falcons' defense. And this is after, like, I spent like 3 weeks in a row. And I think everybody spent like weeks in a row talking about, man, the Falcons finally look like they got some D linemen that can generate some pressure, and then all of a sudden they can't do it in this game. And that's pretty much why they lost this. Like, they had to spend too much time covering, and Mac Jones had a bunch of time to sit back there and figure out who was where and doing what. Moving on, oh my. The Cowboys played the Commanders. This is really important because I had a moment that I wanted to share with you. I was sitting in my girlfriend's apartment watching NFL football like I am every single Sunday, drinking whiskey, and the Cowboys are playing, right? At this point, they're only up by a touchdown. No, I think they were up. It was like 14-8 because the Commanders got a safety and then missed a PAT. Eye roll. She asked me, like genuinely asked me, are the Cowboys good? And the rage that boiled up in my body, I had to quell it very quickly because I'm a better person than that. I got to stop letting the Cowboys get to me. They do not own me. They don't control me. They don't control you. They can't hurt me anymore. My team hurts me enough every single Sunday, more than the Cowboys ever could. But in a year where the Texans are going to be down bad, I would really appreciate it if the Cowboys sucked ass too. But they're not good. They're not. They're the best offense in the league with one of the worst defenses. They're not good. They're like the exact, you know what? The Texans and the Are the Texans and the Cowboys the same? Are they like mirror versions of each other? Like they're just like pointing at each other in the mirror. I'm a great defense with a bad offense, and you're a great offense with a bad defense. Anyway, whatever. CeeDee Lamb came back. The Commanders' defense has been pretty suspect since last season. This game kind of like tore it apart and put it on Front Street. They cannot cover for more than like 3 seconds. Did not help that the offense couldn't figure out how to really shake off a lot of the man coverage that the Cowboys were running. It also didn't help that their top 3 wide receivers were hurt, and so they were using their 4th, 5th, and 6th wide receiver out there. They did have Zach Ertz, which helps a lot. Zach is a really good receiver. But for the most part, man, the Cowboys got ahead in this one, and at no point whatsoever were the Commanders really pressing them. They never were like a real challenge. The Commanders couldn't run the ball at one point. Like I said before, they lost Dorrance Armstrong for the entire season, and he was their number 1 pressure getter by like a lot. And you can see what the difference was in terms of like what we've seen from the Commanders defense just a week ago versus a Bears team that's pretty good to a Cowboys team that's really good as well. But they just, I mean, and I would be hard pressed to believe that there was a play where the Commanders actually generated a pressure that distracted Dak enough to force him to miss out on a throw that he wanted to make. I don't think that happened. But yeah, Dak tore it up because he had all the time in the world in the pocket, and he's got 2 really, really talented wide receivers. They even, look, man, the Cowboys defense even got a turnover in this game. Donovan, Bland? Right, It's late / early in the morning. I forget people's names. Bland went out there, did his thing. He's the guy who like led the team in interceptions last year when Trayvon Diggs was out. So maybe, just maybe, we're starting to see some shades of the defensive backs that are stupidly good for the Cowboys finally recovering from the injuries they've had the last couple of years. Javonte Williams destroyed him up front. It was all bad. It was even worse because Jaden Daniels is hurt again. He's not going to be playing this upcoming week. It'll be Marcus Mariota yet again for the Commanders as they're trying to contend for a playoff spot it feels like every week the NFC East is becoming NFC Beast again because the Cowboys won. The Giants were in a crazy close one with the Broncos, but they're still on a pretty good run right now. And then the Eagles look like they remembered how to play football the old way that they used to play. So it's just getting worse and worse while the Commanders are kind of falling apart at the seams. Speaking of the Eagles played the Minnesota Vikings. This game was slightly deceptive, but not for the reason that you think it is. The Eagles tore it up. This is the best offense that we've seen out of the Eagles the entire season. It was the most balanced. It was not run-centric. Essentially, it was not Jalen Hurts running up and down the field. It was tons of passing to Devontae Smith. A.J. Brown got open a bunch. Dallas Goedert got a couple. Dallas Goedert, out of all the times, even when they were struggling to pass the ball, he was still getting a lot of looks. He was still getting a lot of touchdowns. But this is the kind of offense that every Eagles fan wanted to see all season. And then on the other hand, the Minnesota Vikings, Carson Wentz is back, by the way. He's back like he never left. He is, we saw some shades of it when they played a couple of weeks ago, when he first got the backup spot, starting spot. We saw a little shade of the old Carson Wentz, but it was overshadowed by the fact that Isaiah Rodgers single-handedly outscored an entire NFL offense by himself. Don't forget that. That did happen this season. Anyway, there was 3 big plays that fucked this whole thing up. The Vikings were down big vast majority of this game until the end, where they kind of picked it back up. There was a couple of key moments. One, the pick six. There was a pick six thrown by Carson Wentz. Usually those are really important, when you give up points on defense, when you're on offense. There was a pick six. Carson Wentz gave that up, and it kind of helped the Eagles settle in a little bit more because it took a lot of pressure off the offense to go out there and succeed. But he followed that up a couple plays later. Another interception, right? That's tough. 2 interceptions. And then the third one that really pissed me off, it actually turned. Look, this one wasn't an interception. This one, it felt like everything was kind of coming off the rails. And it was the one good drive that they had since the 2 interceptions. They get down to the 10-yard line for the Eagles. They snap the ball. Carson Wentz drops back. He looks to his left. There's 2 players running out in the flat. They're running flat routes. One is 10 yards deep and one is 5 yards deep. So one is at the end zone. That person is covered. One is 5 yards deep, and they could have turned upfield maybe if they gotten the ball a little bit faster. It was C.J. Ham, the fullback for the Minnesota Vikings. Carson Wentz looks over there to his left and then proceeds to throw the ball into the ground, which becomes intentional grounding. And look, man, if I didn't know what I know about Carson Wentz as a quarterback, I could have sworn the mob got to him. I could have sworn the mob had gotten to him. But I know who Carson Wentz is. I've seen him play football many times before. And it looks like I'm going to see him play football many times after this, even though he's got some kind of shoulder injury. Obviously, wish him a speedy recovery so I can make fun of him more later. Anyway, no, but seriously, though, he played on Thursday Night Football. He looked like it was pretty bad. He had like the whole brace on, and he was having a tough time throwing the ball, which is crazy that he kept staying out there because they do have a backup for the backup, but I get it, Carson. It's football. You got to do the football guy thing. I totally understand. Anyway, the Eagles kind of run away with this one. The Vikings keep it close because their defense is that good, but for the most part, the Eagles put together like their most complete game of the entire season, and the offense goes out there and scores a bunch of points. The wide receivers don't slap. One more week where they don't slap up Jalen Hurts. They actually got the ball this week. Speaking of which, let's talk about balling. The oh my category in this one is a oh my. It's the Bears versus the Saints, 26-14. The Bears are on a 4-game winning streak. This is real silly goose game energy, by the way, and I wanted to just read off the stupid shit that happened. This is back-to-back weeks, so the Bears have had to play in the rain. They played in the rain when they went to Washington, and they're playing in the rain here when they're going up against the Saints. This is at home, though. Spencer Rattler fumbles the Saints' third play of this game. Real silly. The second possession has 2 fumbles for the Bears. They recover one, and then the other one is the silliest goose shit ever. They get all the way down to the Saints' 10-yard line. And the way a snap is supposed to work when you're under center, you're supposed to take the ball away from the center. The center's not handing you the ball and just releasing it. You're supposed to snatch it away from them to let them know that they can release it and get to blocking. The Bears center snaps it. Caleb doesn't snatch it away because his hands probably slipped off of it. And so he just holds onto the ball. And they get called for a false start. A rare center false start. Because he snapped the ball and then moved before the ball had been moved to the quarterback. So it was like a false snap. And it was you call it an attempt to elicit movement, which is crazy because that almost never happens. But yeah, that one. They kick a field goal because of the snap. One possession later, another random Saints defensive back gets their first interception of the season. This guy's name is Quincy Riley. Yes, another rookie defensive back. I feel like that's like the third one this season that we've talked about. Kool-Aid McKinstry got one. We know about our guy Jonas out there who plays safety for the Saints. And now we got Quincy Riley from Louisville out there. First Jonas Sinker is our guy as well. Don't forget him. He was our Who Player of the Week like 3 weeks ago. So this pretty much locked in the Saints and the Bears for the Silly Goose game of the week. The Saints' fourth drive, silly shit. They draw a PI on Tremaine Edmonds, the linebacker. He gets 22 yards because he didn't turn his head around when the ball got there, even though he stopped the ball from getting to the receiver. Kyle Gordon backpacks Caleb Williams for a sack, right? Alvin Kamara, they're running a screenplay, and Alvin Kamara doesn't even attempt to chip Kyle Gordon. And I figured this out as the game went on because the Bears do have Dennis Allen as their defensive coordinator, the former Saints head coach. Every time Alvin Kamara was standing in to block, his defender was sent in as a blitzer. So when he fake blocked, like you're supposed to set up a screenplay with, his defender blitzed, which was Kyle Gordon. And before they could break out into the screen formation for Spencer to throw the ball to him, he cracked Spencer on the side of his head, in his chest. So yeah, that happened. Alvin Kamara literally two-hand taps him as he goes by. Spencer Rattler runs for 12 yards. It gets called back for illegal formation. So we're doing great, right? Jaquan Brisker sacks Spence. Because Alvin Kamara gets fucking bodied again. They snap the ball. He gets bull rushed backwards. And then Jaquan Brisker, who is a massive safety, by the way. I think he's like 6'3" or something like that. And he weighs more than Alvin Kamara does. But he bodies Alvin Kamara and then sacks Spencer Rattler. He gets called for roughing the passer. On the next play, the ball gets deflected like 20 yards up into the air, and they get called for roughing the passer. So it kind of saves the drive a little bit. Alvin Kamara runs for 1 yard. Spencer Rattler throws to Shaheed. TJ Edwards dives, catches, and then drops the interception when he hits the ground. Don't worry, because then the next play, Deshaun Wright intercepts a late and behind throw for the Bears to finally intercept it. So it was like literally 10 plays in a row where 1 positive yard was gained. And then the Bears scored 4 plays later because the theme of this one was the Bears snapped the ball, hand the ball to DeAndre Swift or the other guy. Hold on. I have his name written down on here and I know how to say it. I promise. Anyway, we'll talk about it later. Most of this game was them handing the ball off to DeAndre Swift and him running square through the Saints defense up front. So that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. If you wanted more evidence for how bad it was for the Saints, you know how they are legally required to run a Taysom Hill play every single game. They ran one of those plays and they lost 7 yards off of it. That's how you know it's going real bad for the Saints. When the random Taysom Hill play can't even catch the defense off guard, God gives his toughest battles to his silliest geese. Anyway, that's the Saints. The silliest gooses in this one. The Saints don't have a good drive in this game until the final drive of the half. It's their 7th in this game. That's how fast the pace of this game was going. They had 7 drives in the first half of this game. Spencer Rattler finally gets some time in the pocket, and he starts bombing it down the field. They get a 91-yard drive for a touchdown, and Chris Olave gets 2 catches for 78 yards, and he catches the touchdown. Crazy work. Anyway, that's how the half ends. They go into the locker room. They're about to receive the ball on the second. They're about to go with the double dip, right? This is like the 3rd or 4th time we've seen this where the Saints look like complete trash in the first half and then come back and look amazing in the second. Tell me if you've heard that before. They pull off the double dip and they score a touchdown to open up the second half of this game. So they score 14 points in 2 possessions, right? And Chris Olave goes from before that final drive of the second half. Chris Olave had 2 catches for 6 yards. And then after the double dip, he gets 3 catches for 92 yards and 2 touchdowns. Completely flips the script, right? And becomes a one possession game it becomes a one possession game, right? The Saints went into halftime down 20-0, and then in 2 drives it's now 20-14. The Bears respond by continuing to hammer the fuck out of the Saints with DeAndre Swift. And I say hammer as if he was hitting people. There just weren't people around to catch DeAndre Swift because the offensive line was doing such a good job up front. The Bears get down to the Saints 1-yard line, and on 4th and 1, they get a super duper rare penalty situation. The Bears are in I formation. Caleb fumbles the snap. He jumps on it. It's 4th and 1. So this would turn the ball over inside the Saints' own 5-yard line if they didn't get called for a false start and get another opportunity on 4th and 5. So a rare situation where the penalty saves the drive and it gets points on the board. So yeah, that's pretty crazy. They did have to kick the ball from the Saints' 6-yard line, which is kind of embarrassing, but whatever. The Saints are killing it. They get two touchdowns, 2 stops, and they only give up a field goal for the last 3 possessions of the Bears, right? Then the silly goose of all the silly geese in this game returns, and Spencer Rattler rolls out under pressure. He starts to motion Chris Olave to go up the field, and you know who also goes up the field? Kevin Byard. Kevin Byard, who is alive. Proof of life interception from Kevin Byard. That's his 4th interception, and it's week 7 of the season. He would have had another one, actually, a couple of drives later, but Deshaun Wright, who had an interception earlier in this game, the guy who had the interception in the first half, he actually ran into Kevin Byard as he was catching the other interception because he was trying to catch the interception, and they both dropped it. That's how tough it was. Don't worry, he throws his 3rd pick 2 possessions later, and I chalked that up to a pretty good play. TJ Edwards saw a crossing route and just jumped it from his linebacker spot. So can't really be too mad about that. The Bears ran over, through, and around the Saints. They had 40 rushes in this game. 18 of the 40 rushes went for 5 yards or more. Out of those 18, 8 went for 10 yards or more, and then they had 2 20-plus yard rushes between the 2 of them. So pretty crazy. 222 total yards from the Bears up front, running game, overall total. Another week has passed, and very much like a Animorphs book from the early 90s, the Bears look another shade closer to the Detroit Lions. Look exactly like them in a couple weeks. Moving on. Final category. We are over. I'm not gonna lie, it's 5 o'clock in the morning here. I'm sorry, guys. You know I love to talk about football. This is what we're here for category. You know I love to talk about that. I'm actually not gonna look at my notes on this one because I don't think I have too many on these. So the Bengals play the Steelers. This is Thursday Night Football. By the way, Thursday Night Football has been fucking lit this entire season. I can't even lie about that, bro. But the Bengals, Steelers come in. This is Joe Flacco coming out here doing his thing. They called it the Unk Bowl, which is pretty messed up. You can just be old and not be an unk. Anyway, 2 very different older guys. 2 very different 40-year-olds between Joe Flacco and Aaron Rodgers. Anyway, Bengals, Pittsburgh. Another piece of evidence arises that maybe the Steelers' defense is a little washed. I don't know. People have been saying it. Rumors continue to swirl, but the evidence is kind of damning. They've had 3 good defensive games this season, and then they gave up 33 points to Joe Flacco. Didn't expect too much out of the Bengals defense. They didn't have Trey Hendrickson, and you could tell pretty early on when they weren't able to get any pressure on an offensive line. It's not like super duper great or anything like that, but for the most part, that's what it really came down to. The Bengals kept it pretty simple. Joe Flacco got to go out there and throw it like it was 2009 all over again. Was it 2009 when they won the Super Bowl? I don't remember. 2012 all over again. One of those years, he got to throw it up there and let him go out there and get it, man. Because Jamar Chase and T. Higgins is the best wide receiver duo that he's ever had, like as a quarterback. So, it does suck that it took him to year 19 to get to be able to get to interact with these guys. But he's going out there, he's doing his thing, man. And I think if there was no hope with the whole like Joe Burrow situation, Joe Flacco's given just a little bit of hope to all the Bengals fans, and they deserve it. Me personally, I believe Bengals fans deserve it. This game was so much fun. This game was tons of fun because at first, what really happened was you think the Steelers are going to come out here and kind of cruise over the Bengals, and you're just like, oh man, it is the AFC North, so you never know what's going to happen. It could be like 9-3 or the other way. It is 33-31 for the final score. The interesting part was like towards the middle of the part of this game, the Bengals kind of start to run away with it. They get like back-to-back touchdown drives, and the Steelers are getting 3 and outs essentially. They finally pick it up in the back half of this one. Jaylen Warren finally kind of reemerges. He was hurt last week was his first week back after his ankle injury. Their run game, I feel like has really helped them out a bunch this season because they don't necessarily have like a ton of wide receivers they can depend upon, but these are, I don't know. I couldn't tell if these are two playoff contenders that I was seeing because I think at one point they were talking about like if the Steelers can hold the lead in this game, they will be 3.5 games ahead in the AFC North. And if they can't, they'd be 1.5 games ahead. So this keeps the AFC North yet again very interesting. Lamar Jackson comes back this week, which will continue to make things even more enticing as they always do. The NFC Beast, AFC North, NFC West, 3 of the craziest divisions in the NFL right now, man. I had a ton of fun watching that game just to see. It was cool seeing big plays offensively and defensively overall. But like I said, I think this game helped me believe that the Steelers defense is washed. Whatever. The Broncos play the Giants. This score says 33-30. It says 33-32. I'd like to raise one piece of very important information that I think may alleviate some confusion. This is one of the best games in the entire NFL season if you only cared about the fourth quarter. I put it in this category because I don't think many people imagined that you could be able to pull off something like this. So just to read it off, like this is another instance where the Broncos don't play well into the second half of the game. This is the third time they've done it this season. They did it against the Eagles, they did it against the Colts, and now they're doing it against the Giants in this game. They spend the first half of this game not being able to function, essentially. They can't really complete any passes beyond 10 yards. The Giants' defensive line is on Bo Nix's ass. Brian Burns gets 2 sacks in this game. Brian Burns is the other guy that I mentioned earlier that has 9 sacks on the season, so has like a real chance to compete for the sack record. Remember just a couple years ago he was in Carolina and they kind of traded him away because they didn't think he was all that good, and now he's like potentially knocking on the door of having one of the best seasons pass rushers ever had. But we'll see what happens. It's a long ways away from 22.5, but 9 sacks at week 7 is a good start. It's a good way to go because that means at week 14 he should be at like 9 or he should be at 18 at week 14. We'll see. They turned up on this one. Their whole goal was pretty simple. Take away the run, make Bo Nix beat them. Bo Nix could not do that in the first half. It definitely worked. They dropped into a deeper zone as the wide receivers were running deeper down the field. And the pass rush from the Giants went to work because it's too many of them to contain consistently, and it showed throughout the course of this game in the first half at least. The Broncos offense seemed to be adding more looks from Marvin Mims throughout the course of this one, which I think is important. Marvin is one of their bigger playmakers in terms of when he gets out in the open space, it's bad news for the defenders. He's an all-pro kick returner. They mentioned that every single week, as they should. All-pro is a great honor. This is like the 4th game in a row where the rush offense has just been non-existent. Like, J.K. Dobbins had an entire drive against the Chargers where they just handed the ball to him and he scored a touchdown, and now they can't find him or R.J. Harvey any space to go out there and be successful. Abandoning the run very quickly, very Sean Payton-esque, if you will. It's 19-0 at halftime. As a matter of fact, this game is at 19-0 until the 14th minute and 8th second of the fourth quarter. The Broncos score their first touchdown to make it 19-8. Yes, that means to start the fourth quarter, the Broncos had 0 points and it ended up with 33 at the end of it all. 33 and the win. You're probably wondering how. By the way, leading up to this, Cam Scatterby was going crazy on these boys. The Giants' pass offense wasn't necessarily like super duper consistent or anything like that, but fact of the matter is, Cam Scatterboo was scatterbooing all over these dudes, man. That guy is pretty impressive. I don't like a lot of the hype that's around the both of them because it's very clearly centered around the fact that he's a white running back in the NFL and that Jackson Dart is like a white dude that wears chains and talks a certain way, all this kind of stuff like that. Not a super big fan of it because anyway, we don't have time for that conversation. The Giants, like I said before, dependent upon Cam Scatterboo, rookie running back, carried them versus one of the best defenses in the NFL. Moving on to the fourth quarter, they scored 33 points in one quarter of football. There are teams in the NFL who have not scored 33 points in 2 games. I think those are the New York Jets, as a matter of fact. They get a TD catch off of a pass that is blocked by a Giants defensive back, so they're running crossing routes in the end zone. It's deflected because a DB swats it down. It goes up into the air, and Troy Franklin catches it. They get multiple rushing touchdowns from Bo Nix, like legitimately, like they get a designed run play for Bo Nix, and he runs the ball in because I guess they don't have faith in the running backs. I don't know, dude. It was weird. It threw off the defense quite a lot because they were definitely focused in on taking away the run as much as possible. So makes sense to just keep the ball with Bo Nix and have him take off and run it. The wilder part was the Giants actually were able to respond. Like I said, it was 19-0, which means that the Giants scored 20 points in the second half of this game, 14 points in the fourth quarter of this game. They had a touchdown score by Jackson Dart off of a weird PI call that happened in the end zone. Riley Moss got knocked down by the wide receiver that was he was defending, and they called pass interference on him. It was really weird. And then Jackson Dart dives into the end zone. There are 37 seconds left on the clock when that happens, and it is a 4-point game with the Giants leading. And by the way, before that, Daniel Bellinger caught a deflected pass from Wendell Robinson and ran that in for a touchdown as well. So they scored 2 touchdowns, one off Jackson Dart, another off Daniel Bellinger. And like I said before, the Broncos scored off 2 rushing touchdowns from Bo Nix, and then they scored off a deflected pass into the hands of Troy Franklin to get back in front of this one. The Broncos mossed 2 Giants DBs on their way to getting to a game-winning field goal from like the 20-yard line. It was crazy. You should go back, and if there's a chance that you have to watch it, you should watch it as many times. You should watch the game from halftime on. You don't have to watch the first half. The first half looked bad for both teams, despite the fact that the Giants got 19 points on the board. The Giants are obviously heartbroken about this one, but I want you to think about this. Think about where the Giants were 4 weeks ago with Russell Wilson at the helm. No offense to Russell Wilson, but he wasn't necessarily inspiring the other players to go out there and play at the level that we're seeing that the Giants operate at. Wendell Robinson has found a new life as a wide receiver for the Giants, despite the fact that Malik Neighbors is out. You would think that their entire offense was shut down. Instead, they found another way to be able to go out there and succeed, man. Just 4 weeks ago, these guys looked dead in the water, and now they're like legitimate playoff contenders in the NFC East. Crazy stuff, man. NFL's a wild place. The Broncos were a reach of a Super Bowl contender, and the dark truth about the Broncos is, and I'm starting to think this too, and you tell me if you agree, they may be the team that plays up and down to their competition. The team that no matter what competition they play, the game is always going to be close because they never go out there and absolutely dominate anyone. I will say feels like it's like the 3rd week in a row where we've seen a team challenge Bo Nix to go out there and beat him, and he has come and stood up to the challenge, and I respect that. I just wish he would do it a little bit sooner. You want to talk about a way to get better as a quarterback? Have an entire NFL defense be like, you have to go out there and beat us, and you figure out how to do it in modern day football. Moving on, last game on the list, Packers, Cardinals. This game was crazy. Cardinals are supposed to suck. They don't. The Cardinals are like a real contender. Their record does not display what has happened in the last 3 games the Cardinals have played. They have led going into the 4th quarter and lost subsequently in those games. This is yet another example of that one. The Cardinals have like a real problem on their hands because I don't know what they're going to do when Kyler comes back. Obviously, they're going to put Kyler back into place, but like how quickly are they going to be okay with going back to Jacoby Brissett? Because you guys know, historically, Kyler gets hurt like somewhere around this point during the season. Then he comes back, And then he doesn't play as well. Then he gets real stagnant in his offense because usually the injury that hampered him is somewhere in his leg, right? Like he has ankle injuries, he tore his ACL, all that kind of stuff like that. And Jacoby Brissett, he's been standing strong in that pocket and delivering the ball to players who have not seen the ball all season. So I have a strange feeling that they may like him a little bit more than Kyler Murray, who's trying to figure out a way to get Marvin Harrison Jr. involved, right? Every single time he rolls out of the pocket. The Panthers defense made up their minds about what they were going to do. They were dedicated to stopping the run at all cost because they believed that if Jacoby Brissett has to beat them, they can win that game. They can barely win that game, but they can win that game. They went out there and they won it. Jacoby gets sacked 6 times in this game, and every time he is not sacked, he's pretty much diming up the Packers defense, which is one of the best in the league. Trey McBride is all over the place in this game. This guy's amazing. Whether he's playing wide receiver, whether he's attached to the line and he's helping with the blocking and then going out and running a route, he was instrumental because he was one of the few guys that it felt like when things were going horribly, horribly wrong, Jacoby knew that he could throw the ball to Trey McBride, who, by the way, had 2 of the 3 touchdowns for the Arizona Cardinals in this one. And I want to say more than there were 6 total touchdowns in this game. 4 of them were scored by tight ends. The other 2 were Josh Jacobs. Tells you what time we're in. The era of power and big people is back, ladies and gentlemen. 21 personnel for the win. The Cardinals defense has to be one of the best in the league. And I wrote that down because I wanted to think about it a little bit more before I went on air. But I feel like I should just say it, man. Like, I see them play football. They look good. They play well every single week, regardless of who the opponent is, man. And I think that's important. I've seen them go. They went up against the Green Bay Packers in this one. They held them to 27 points. It should have been a lot worse, especially considering how many times the offense put them in such bad positions. But the Cardinals defense has to be up there, man. Like, their offense wasn't matching their output, and now that is the case, they've ascended to like another level. They play at a much higher. They played on par with the Packers defense in this game. I will say this: it was crazy that the Packers were able to absolutely destroy the run game for the Cardinals without using their linebackers. Most of the tackles for loss in this game were just purely defensive linemen winning blocks up front instantaneously. I've never seen somebody shut down the run with just their D linemen. Like, Clay Walker couldn't get to the running back fast enough because his defensive tackles were beating him there, which is wild, but a good place to be. The Cardinals get up 23-20 late in the fourth quarter of this game. They are stuck on a 4th and 2 in their own territory, and they decide that they're going to try and do the one thing that they have not done all day, and that is push the Packers defensive line back. They are going to go for the QB sneak, and you guessed it, they got stood the fuck up. There is no way that they're at no point during this game was there a way you could be like, the Cardinals got push on the Packers line up front. Now, did they create gaps by taking advantage of some certain rush lanes? Yes. A lot of the good running plays for the Cardinals in this game was them running to the outside of the tackles. Up the middle was non-existent, and it showed itself in this game. That turned the ball over, and 7 plays later, the Packers score and take the lead for the first time all game. Could have punted the ball away and banked on the defense, which has been really good all season, to hold the Packers off, because they did have a 23-20 lead, so it would still put the Packers in a position where they had to score a touchdown to go out there and win the game. They could not kick a field goal and win, but decided to go for it on 4th and 2, and it was a long 2. And they got nowhere. They snapped the ball and stood straight up. That's essentially what happened. By the way, speaking of people going off, Micah Parsons goes the fuck off in this one. He gets 3 of the 6 Packers sacks. And 2 of those sacks were on 3rd down. One of them was on first down of the final drive for the Cardinals in this game, and it turned 1st and 10 into 2nd and 19, which eventually led to Jacoby Brissett throwing the ball out of the back of the end zone and the Cardinals losing in heartbreaking fashion. Like I said, they've lost 3 straight games that they have entered the fourth quarter with the lead. Cannot finish, cannot close. That was brutal. this episode is over. We did pretty good. I only went like 27, 25 minutes over. Last week it was definitely like 2 hours over. Anyway, on that note, make sure you like and subscribe. Appreciate everybody who checked out the pod. Hit me up on Twitter at FB_playbook. Hit me up on Instagram at TheAshtonForever. If you got any suggestions on how to make the podcast better, hit me up as well. I'm always open to that kind of stuff. If you got a hookup with a guest that's like a reporter or a player in the NFL or something like that, hit me up too. I'm going to try and start figuring out how to do that and pre-record interviews and upload those to my YouTube channel. So, with that being said, I'm out of here. It is 5 o'clock in the morning for me. I got to go to sleep so I can go to work in a couple of hours. Shout out to everybody. Make sure you have a safe weekend. If you're going to drink responsibly. Have a DD or drink at your house. It's much cheaper. Shout out to my whiskey people. And if you need a seltzer suggestion, Cayman Jack. Cayman Jack has great seltzers, especially if you add tequila to it. Other than that, drink your water. Make sure you work out. Hug the people that you love. And most importantly, go home, Roger.